glad I'm
Okay,
here.
Boris, hi. Can I please test your mic? Can you please say something so I can see if I can hear you? Boris. Boris, can you try to say something? I want to see if I can hear you.
Hi all.
Hi.
Hi Joseph. Hi Boris. How are you? Let's see. Hi Sims.
Hi
Can everyone hear
Collins.
me?
Hi Collins. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Nice to finally put a face to the name.
Yeah, it is. It is.
How is the
nice
how is
setup you
the
have, Greg.
yeah, how thanks. How is the lunch looking right now?
The lunch is amazing. I mean,
Excellent.
you guys are all here. We have a great turn up. We have Daddy Sims in the building. We have Joseph.
Marvelous.
We have Boris from Tuvayo. And the release was amazing. After that, we had this interesting after party, or what we call up close and personal with Waape, where we were taking in questions and telling people about the features, telling people about how we've changed, and basically everything that has been happening between this past 1 year. So really excited about how that went, but more excited to hear what you all have to share in regards to thriving in the gig economy, because that's what we're all about, pushing gigs, pushing people to get opportunities that they don't have access to, and just creating better livelihood. And I'm honestly thrilled to have Joseph on the call, because what Razi is trying to pull off, and I hope I'm not throwing spoilers here, but Razi wants to pull off 10 million jobs and gigs for African youth within the next period of, is it about 5 years?
5 years, yeah, in the next 5 years, by
5 years.
2025, yes.
It's a crazy number, but yeah, super thrilled to want to hear how that's going to happen and learn about that. And we'll be diving into that real soon. And on the other end, we have Tuvayo Travel. Now, Tuvayo Travel is also another company. Boris, are you here? Just let me know if you can hear me. Mic check, Boris. All right, maybe while he gets to us. So Tuvayo's other mission, now bear with me on this one, is that they want to be the first African tour travel company that gets us to Mars. So they're on the same wavelength with Tesla. They're more than just a normal travel company, but they want us to be able to do travel to Mars from Africa. A lot of amazing stuff and thought going into all the startups we're having on this call today and the speakers here, but not saving the best for last, people. This next person who we're going to talk about, or who I'm going to introduce, she makes people call her Daddy Sims. She makes people call her Daddy Sims.
Oh my God,
whether young
Colin,
or old.
do you know, you're making me feel so bad right now, because these guys have actual accomplishments, and my accomplishment is, oh yeah, she makes grown-ass men call her Daddy Sims.
Nah,
Do you get what I mean? Oh my
What's
God.
behind the name?
I'll let her tell you about that, but I'm not selling her short. Now let's get into her accomplishments. So she's a brand ambassador for MTN. She did the very first season of the MTN Pulse, and she was voted as the host for that season of the MTN Pulse. She's also a brand ambassador for Jumia. She's been running campaigns for the Jumia anniversary and been doing amazing at it. And she's, Sims, should I really continue with the list of big brands that you're doing right here? So
I don't think
on this
you
call
should,
today, on this call today, we basically just have big names and people who have a multitude of experience in gigs. And yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to how this is all going to roll out and how we're going to pull this off. So I'll turn it over to you guys and let you introduce yourselves, because I've maybe not covered some areas, but let's get it started with y'all introducing yourselves. Who wants to take it on?
I vote Joseph goes first.
All right, cool. Yeah, so my name is Joseph Rutakangwa. I'm originally from Tanzania, but I live in Mauritius. I run a company called Ruazi. So what we do, we provide organizations with on-ground data from Africa. So data on products, services, activities, and a bunch of other things that they'll be looking for. So the problem here is that you have, like prior to starting Ruazi, I was working with multinationals as a consultant. And, the biggest problem in that world is you have a lot of interest in investing in Africa or expanding into Africa, but we don't have data, right? And the data that I'm talking about is data that you can't access digitally. So you have to be physically on the ground to map, like the situation, whether it's pricing, whether it's distribution, whether it's, land or street imaging and so forth, right? So, we don't have data, and the issue isn't that ministries and so forth, it's not just that they're not collecting the data and so forth, but it's that they don't have enough coverage in all areas to continuously collect this data on a need basis, right? So what we saw as a solution to this is we have, so on this one side, you have organizations looking for data, but then on the other side, you have right now 200 million Africans who don't have jobs, right? They're educated, they have smartphones, they have access to the internet. But the problem is, in Africa, you either have an office job or you do manual labor. We don't have these in-between jobs like working at Walmart, McDonald's, like working as a delivery guy or so forth, right? So how do we now, like create opportunities, like income generation opportunities for people who have maybe finished university and they're looking for, the next step, whether it's getting a job or going for further studies or starting a business, or they just can't fit into the formal sector, right? So what we're doing, we're providing gigs, which are data collection gigs, to that 200 million people, right? It's 200 million now, to be a billion by 2050. So we're providing these data collection gigs, which people are sent to places to collect data as per the orders of the organizations. So let's say it's I don't know, MTN or Vodacom or AT&T, and they want to understand the data packages in Lagos, Nigeria. So we have mappers in Lagos, Nigeria. They harvest the data. They are the consumers. So you better get it from the actual person who is using your product or will use your product. So they provide that data and they get paid for it. Now companies get, of course, the analytics, the insights, the interactive maps, and all that. So right now we have 5,000 mappers in 40 countries across sub-Saharan Africa. We add about 1,000 mappers every month, based on the demand, the data demand that we have in different countries, but by the end of this year, we'll be having 50,000 based on the projected data demand. And we expect to get to 10 million by 2025 and 100 million by 2030 and absorb 1 billion people by 2050, right? And the whole point is this. If you don't, we can't be oblivious to the fact that we maybe perfect, the four of us sitting here, we're doing well and all that. But if we don't create opportunities for 1 billion people by 2050, these guys will cause uprisings and instability in different countries, as we're seeing in Mozambique and, northern Mozambique and the likes. And all these governments and all these systems that we are benefiting by running businesses and all that will collapse, right? So it's in everyone's best interests, including organizations, whether they're in Africa or not, to actually invest in, it's shared value. It's not that you're helping someone, you're donating. No, you're giving them a job that you actually need. You're not right now in the Congo, right? You're afraid of going to Congo. You're afraid of going to Somalia. But why can't you now have a Somalian provide you with data from their place, right? And this is the mission we're working on. We have organizations on one side, young people on the other side. We link the two. The organization spends money on obtaining market intelligence. People make a living, and everyone is happy because of it. Yeah, so that's Wazi. We've been around for 3 years. We're going 3 years next month, and we've seen a lot of growth. 40 countries in Africa, 5,000 mappers. We serve companies in different industries, and we've helped a bunch of companies expand on the continent and invest more on the continent. So we look forward to seeing more of this happening in the next decade. So yeah.
Wow, nice. That's really amazing. And I love how you have the numbers set out and like a whole plan laid out on how to get this done. It's really inspiring to see that you're not just looking at maybe getting Razi into these opportunities with the businesses that you're working with, but you have a bigger picture of connecting them, these businesses that you're working with, and creating more opportunities and sort of averting this whole problem. So that will be all from me. I'll just hand it over right now to Angelo, who is supposed to be your host. So Angelo, take it away. And it was amazing meeting you, Joseph, and everyone. And I hope to see you all on the other panels. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
All right. Good afternoon, good day to you, wherever you are. My name is Angela Sonanda Collins. Thank you. So first of all, to pick up from where we had been, you sort of went into the numbers and giving us all the great things, the amazing things your company has done. So let's take it back a bit to the people that are still wondering what the gig economy is. So what is the gig economy? What does it offer? What does it mean for people who are looking to get into it?
Is someone else responding, or is just
oh no, you can take us through.
Okay. So basically, in the area that we're in, gig work. So we have I like to take it only from the employment perspective first, because it makes sense, and that's where you touch a lot of people, right? So we have the traditional model is you go to school, finish university, or A levels, and then you look for an office job, right? Because of course you're educated, so you're less likely to accept anything less. All right. The problem is currently the vacancies available every year from different African countries. I'll just focus on Africa for the sake of simplicity. The vacancies that are available in the formal sector in sub-Saharan African countries aren't enough to absorb everyone who is coming out of school. And this is only if you focus on universities, right? So, and we map companies too. What companies are facing is that the guys who are finishing university don't have the performance skills, right? So they have the education, but education isn't performance skills. So they aren't ready to actually work, or they don't take up the jobs, right? So you still have, as much as the open positions are fewer than the people who are graduating, still not everyone who is graduating wants to take on any position just to fill them. So that gap remains, right? So what's the solution? We believe at Ruazi, that taking advantage of the concept of gigs is a more viable alternative to solving the unemployment problem. So gigs, what's concept of a gig is simply you get paid per completed task. So whether the completed task is to deliver a package, whether a completed task in our case is to submit data from a data collection point, but you get paid per completed task. Now, the advantages for the person who is working is you work when you want, you have flexibility on earnings, so your earnings are not capped, so you can earn as much as you want or as less as you want. You can move, so you can earn from different places and so forth. The advantages from an employer or a business is that you spend only when you want certain tasks done, right? And your expenditures are directly linked to results, right? Or to performance, which is results. Now, in our concept, I'll just, to make it clear, I'll just use an example of how Razi works. So we have, let's say, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola wants to know how many retailers in Kampala, Uganda are selling soda in general. So say we decide to map 10,000 retailers in Kampala to get that kind of data. And we are paying $1 per every retail outlet visit. So every time, a guy in Uganda visits an outlet, collects the data and walks out, they get paid $1. So these are 10,000 available tasks. And let's say we have 100, we send these 10,000 available tasks to 100 people in Kampala, which means if they all do an equal, an equal amount of tasks, they will will visit 100 shops per person, which is $100. Now, in the gig world, it's may the best man win. So one person can decide to say, you know what, I'll visit 50 shops every day. So that's 5 days a week. That's 250 shops. In a month, I make $1,000. And the other person will say, maybe that's too much work, walking around, this and that. So they may do 10 shops a day, so $50 a week and $200 a month. So this is the flexibility that happens in the gig world, where it's not that everyone has only has a fixed number of visits they have to make and a fixed salary at the end of the month. No, there's a flexibility where one person can make $1,000, the other person can make 200 or even less if they want, right? And the other advantage is it's on demand for both parties. So for the people who are taking on the gigs, for instance, we've seen many cases, young people need money now for a certain purpose. They just, the ones who are mappers, they take on gigs to get a certain amount, let's say $100, $200. And when that's it, they say, okay, for instance, this mapper, she's called Gloria, she's in Lagos. She needed money for, her mom. Her mom was sick. So she did gigs worth $200 and that's it. Then she went on to take care of her mother, right? Then of course she comes back, after a couple of weeks when she's ready to take on more gigs. So this is the flexibility that happens, as opposed to if you have an office job, of course you have to report every day, and if your salary is $100 or $200 a month, that's it. There's you can't do much to change that immediately. And for the companies, okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm going. You can just cut me when you've had
no.
So this is to close it. So this is what you find in the the benefits for both companies and giggers. I've focused, of course, more on giggers, but these are the benefits that you get rather than sitting and just sitting idle and just waiting for placing applications and just waiting for a call. You can take on gigs and start generating income, which you can use for other purposes in your life.
All right, that's awesome. So basically, what the gig economy offers is flexibility, right? And I think you made that abundantly clear. So you focused a lot on the giggers. So now the question that I have for Miss Arina Rita, as a digital marketer, what factors have exactly affected the growth of the gig economy on the side of businesses? What are businesses looking for in the gig economy? I don't know if she's on the call. Hello, Rita. Can you hear me?
Hey, if she isn't, I could.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Rita. I don't know who introduced me. Yeah. Your question was, as a digital marketer, what are those things, the factors that maybe clients are looking for, or what, if I got it clear, right?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, fast forward to the gig economy. I personally feel like the way you described it, and another person who talked about flexibility, this field comes with a lot of flexibility, and this puts a lot of opportunities for us on the table. And most times you find someone is doing like maybe 10 gigs, and these 10 gigs, someone is like focusing on one, and then they're not giving the other, they're not giving the client what they want. So I feel like the most thing that every gig person or gigger or whatever it is should know is to learn how to plan. Yeah, learn how to plan effectively, plan for your content, plan for your gigs, yeah, and find what you can do best, because it doesn't help you saying, I'm in the gig economy, today I'm here, tomorrow I'm here. Find that niche, find something that you can do, and focus on that, and prepare, research, no, if I'm Rita and maybe me, I want to focus on and be an influencer, for example, in the banking sector. What is the banking sector saying? What is the government saying? What are the opinion leaders, the thoughtful leaders in that very department, in that very, industry saying? Position yourself as the best, and, so that whenever these opportunities arise, you have a share of voice. You know what to say. You know what to give the client, because what most of these clients are looking for in the gig economy is someone who can deliver. And if you're going to deliver some mediocre stuff, trust me, there's no client who would want you to deliver mediocre stuff. So generally, I would say for the gig economy, for us to thrive better, we need to position ourselves and enrich us and make research, develop ourselves, learn more. If you're going to do a gig, first research, what does this take? What is it about? What have people done in the past? How can I improve it? Is it something I can do? And of course, the freedom that this comes with sometimes also misleads us. You're like, I have this gig, it's just a small thing, so I can just maybe say, if a client gives you the key performance indicators, they're like, you want 2 posts a day, so you just think like, you know what, I'm just going to post these 2 posts and let it go. No, there's more to that. Find out, engage. Most of these guys are looking for engagement. I understand numbers are very important as well, but these guys are looking for engagement. These guys are looking for content, and content marketing is like a thing now. Yeah, the videos, the blogs, the what, everything. So what these clients are looking for is that thing that you have that is going to separate you from everyone that is in the gig economy. Like, was it Joseph said, people just go to school, finish, and with this, today jobs are not there. We are all in the same space. So this space is cluttered, that I must say. The gig economy is a cluttered space. You have a guy who did engineering and, he hasn't figured out what engineering is about, and is like, you know what, I think I should be here figuring out my life. You have Rita who did economics. She's like, you know what, I think I don't want to do economics. Let me do this. So it's a very cluttered space, and how you stand out is how you position yourself. Yeah, that's my submission for now. Let someone else carry on.
I think Boris, you wanted to share something. If you could go ahead.
I just wanted to supplement on what the previous speaker has been saying concerning what the business people are looking for. I think it's simple. The business people are looking for the best in that field. Yeah. So if you want to do like the banking sector that she has talked about, are you the best at that? That's all they're looking for. Because remember, it's you looking up, it's you coming to them. So if you're coming to them, you have to be the best at it. Then someone asked a question about do you only get jobs for the elite youth or also illiterates? I would like to tell that person that the gig economy does not segregate anyone. Yeah, you don't need to go to school to know how to run social media. You don't need to go to school to know how to talk to people. All those, it doesn't segregate at all. You just have to be the best at your craft. Yeah.
So thank you for that question. So there's another. So yeah, go ahead, Joseph. But while you answer that,
so
there's another question for you from Joseph, from Emma Stewart. So I think you answer both of them, right?
Yes,
Emma Stewart's question is, if I visit these online shops, like Joseph said, do I get to buy anything from these shops, or is it just visiting and viewing, then I earn my $1?
Yes. So for the first one, with Ruazi, because we only focus on data collection gigs, so someone has to be literate and has to have basic competence in using apps, and has to be very quick in understanding instructions. Because what happens is we're harvesting data not just for consumer products, which is the shop case, but we're harvesting data for banks, we're harvesting data for HR companies, we're harvesting data for agricultural companies. So we're having a lot of different types of data, and every gig has instructions. And what we've seen, of course, I'm interacting with a lot of mappers, so you can see the difference that the mappers who are quick to understand, like, you read the instruction, of course, the instructions are as clear as possible. So the mappers who are quick to understand and execute are more successful than the mappers who are slower on that end, right? And the mappers who, if it's difficult to use an app, then of course that becomes difficult, to perform the gigs. And and gigs pay differently. For instance, the visiting retail outlets is $1. And you're not, so this is for retail outlets, it's you're doing it, it's what you call, because it's intelligence, you're not going to buy a product, you're going to find out whether the products are there, find out what the prices are, and so forth, right? And it's the same thing for farms, it's the same thing for schools. We're mapping schools and so forth. So you in many cases, in many gigs, you just have to observe and collect the data. And of course, it has to come, if you're doing street imaging, it has to come with the images and all that. And we have other more advanced gigs, which are like harvesting data from suppliers in different countries, which are companies, which is now you have to actually visit and engage with the procurement managers or such. And this is not a normal person. The person who'd qualify to perform such a gig is someone who has some experience in sales, someone who understands pitching, or so every gig requires a different caliber of person, but the minimum level of gigs, you have to be literate, you have to use the mobile app, you have to know how to use the mobile app, you have to be quick at learning instructions and understanding instructions.
All right, thank you very much. I think people are getting the full picture of what the gig economy means and what it means to actually survive in this economy. So finally, from someone that is actually actively in this particular economy, Simran, could you tell us what advice you give to they can get more gigs? What economy are on demand right now?
What is on demand right now in the gig economy? Can you repeat your question, please?
The question is, as a person that is constantly in the gig economy, someone that is interacting as an influencer and all these things, how can a person get more gigs? What areas are on demand right now? If someone wants to go into this particular field, what is the best place to start?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to start off by saying there's no dynamic to this. I personally had absolutely no idea what I was doing when I did it. I don't even know how I got here. I don't even know why you guys endorsed me for this kind of stuff, because it's like, I don't know, Cash. No, I'm just the kind of person who goes with the flow. But what I can say is gigs is definitely the future of social media.
Okay, Ansel, please confirm if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Natasha.
Okay. So I think we're just going to start, and then the rest of the panelists will probably find us along the way.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to thank you so much for being part of this event, for being part of our product release. I hope you watched the videos before this. Just in case you didn't, I'll introduce myself once again. My name is Natasha Katondwachi. I'm currently the team head at Waape, and I am so glad to have you. So we're going to have our panel, discussion panel about hiring remotely and successfully. But let's have you introduce yourself first, and then we can proceed.
Okay, thanks, Natasha, for having me once again. My name is Ansel Ochinobwire. I'm the founder and CEO of Antiworks. So I've been running the entrepreneurship company for the last 8 years. And Other than that, I also do business consultancy for various organizations, and also as well as I do coaching and mentorship for other various institutions. So I think maybe pretty much that's it about me. So maybe, yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. We would also love to hear what Antiworks does.
Okay. So what Antiworks does, it's what we call a concept development company, which provides solutions in three areas, which is in media, marketing, and consultancy. So pretty much clients come to us with needs in the three areas, and we offer them solutions. And also we work with partners as well, so that we can be able to deliver some value or some services to some of their end users. So as I said earlier, I've been running it for the last 7 years, and we've worked with about 130 different companies, both locally and out of the country. And also I've worked on 12 partnerships. We're a small team. We actually, that's why this topic kicked me in, because us, when it comes to hiring and working remotely, it's something we've done for the last 3 years. So this new normal to us has been normal for the last 3 years. So pretty much that's what Antiworks does. We help organizations reach certain aspects through our services.
Wow, that's nice. That's nice. I'm so happy to know that that is one of the things that the team at Antiworks lives by. The whole concept of working remotely, considering the fact that this is where the world is headed to with the new normal and with all these things going on, the best way now is to work remotely. And I would like to hear from you what you think remote work exactly is, what it entails, and do you think the community we are in right now is embracing remote working? Do you think the community we're living in now is seeing the advantages of remote working? Recently, we were trying, an intern was trying to apply at Waape, and because Waape is a remote working space, when their supervisors found out that they were going to be working remotely, they had to instruct them to drop the internship, because they believe that for them to be able to see what you're doing, you need to have a physical place of operation. And for us, that was a bit funny. We didn't really get it, and it gave us this thought of maybe the community we're living in right now has not entirely embraced this whole concept of working remotely. So what's your opinion about that?
Well, Natasha, thanks for that question. So first of all, just to start with what you asked, remote work is pretty much doing assignments or carrying out tasks from a location that is not necessarily, should I say, a traditional office space. And that simply means that you actually able to have the ability to carry out tasks. It could be online, it could be offline, and these tasks are assigned to you by a certain organization or institution that they are affiliated to. And of course, it varies because there are some people who can do remote work, maybe say for accounting, others can do remote work for media, others can do remote work for even things like sales. So it really varies, but all in all, it's at a location where you don't have to be attached to an institution, and you can do it really, should I say, from the comfort of the area you're working with. Now it's good you raised across like your intern. Even us, trust me, we had that issue more recently. Yeah, where we were, having interns, and I told them, hey, look, we are going to do remote internship because still the pandemic is here, and you guys need to learn. So I actually came up with personally, I came up with things and topics that they could be interested in. But remember that Friday, where we had the get to know meeting, because of course I didn't want them to start Monday, but without us knowing who they are and what the expectations are. So we learned out everything, and I came to understand what they need. But surprisingly, the first day went well, then the second day, then the third day, all interest went down. So it tells you a lot about how our perception is, because all these guys were thinking, no, we should be in the office, what. But hey, I'm like, look, we are not there, so try as much as possible to be adaptive, because this is one of the things that we are now also trying to put as a culture. But unfortunately, they didn't get it. And yeah, I think the internship ended prematurely. Then, of course, you've mentioned about also having office space and what, we are now fighting a shift where companies like Waape have to, first of all, make people unlearn the aspect of office space. I read about a British billionaire who didn't have a single office this week on BBC Enterprise. Quite surprising, but the guy doesn't have an office. He works anywhere in the world, so long as there's internet connectivity. And same goes as well for people like the other company has 2,000 employees again in Britain, where they don't have an office. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you about us? Like we are still asking companies like Waape, Antiworks, and whoever, you should have an office. You should be where we should find you. Yet we are now actually having a virtual space. We're having a virtual meeting between me and you. And I believe we're actually working and communicating. So now the mindset should shift on how best can we be able to unlearn the office as it was, and also how to learn to live with now having meetings like online through collaborations and such things. And I think once we do that, then we'll be headed towards the right direction.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I agree. And for me, my highlight is the ability to unlearn something. And that is in this regard of being able to stay relevant in the job market and all these things. I think one of the most important things that people out there should know is that flexibility is important. Yes, you learned something in the past, but where a need arises, are you able to unlearn it? It's quite important right there, like Ansel stated it, and I think that we should cultivate a culture of unlearning things. So Ansel, in that regard, that we have seen that the community has not fully embraced this whole concept of remote working, including universities that are supposed to be guiding us. What do you think, or what advice would you give companies like Waape or like Antiworks or all these companies that are trying to do this whole remote thing? What do you think we can do to change the mindset of people out here to enable the community embrace more remote working?
Well, it's a simple trick I learned a few years ago. I always put this test out. Now we're approaching 2 p.m. So I ask people, okay, fine. Now we have about how many hours towards the day end? We have about 10 hours. So I keep on telling them, okay, why don't you start counting how many hours you have left? Then you will see the value of how much it will take for you to commute from A to B. So once you start losing that, you're figuring out you're starting to lose time, which is the most greatest resource, is now you start changing your mindset of understanding, okay, so I have a meeting now in 1 day here. So maybe, okay, let me just log in, I meet with this person, because it might, and now the situation as it is, it may take me 1 hour to reach there. But how about actually in that 1 hour we have met? And we now actually have a collaboration and may are discussed. So I think we should now start valuing the time it takes in between to set up these meetings and to wait for people. Other than now you start plugging in, do what you have to do, and you move on from there, because we are racing against time. Believe it or not, it's a 1.5 years since COVID was first announced in the country. So what does that tell you? We still have not reached even a mere 10% of vaccination. So that means that a lot of things should have been happening. Yet I saw a country like Israel, 55% on vaccine. So we need to start now valuing time more, and now to start telling people, okay, you know what, let's have this meeting. It might not take us 2 hours to meet, but I'm sure in 10, 15 minutes, we shall have gone somewhere. And move on from there. So I think we should now actually look at the time factor, because people always say the new normal, but I see also people getting delayed in Zoom meetings. So I want to tell people that, from Waape on Antiworks, let's not talk about a mindset. Let's talk about how much time, because if you start looking at the time frame, then you'll start actually seeing there's actually no need for us to physically meet or do things physically, because it will take a lot of time to set that up. But I mean, this has just taken us 2 minutes of setup, and here we are meeting virtually. So it's the mindset of time management should be the one employed here.
I totally agree. I don't like that there's a huge difference between when you actually have to move to go and attend a meeting. Traffic, you need to dress up and all those things.
Yeah.
But if you just have an online meeting, you just you set up your calendar invite, the reminder comes in, and 2 minutes you're on the call and you do what you want to do and you're done. So I totally agree on that one. And I hope that people out here can embrace it much more. So Ansel, to you as an employer and to all the employers that are out there, what are some of those tools and measures that you implement to make sure that, yes, you're not in the same space with your employees, but are they doing what they're supposed to do? How do you measure your efficiency? How do you tell if a task has been completed or not? What are some of these tools that people out there can also make use of?
Okay, so what happens, Natasha, Antiworks, we normally use Google Calendar to first of all set up a meeting. And in that Google Calendar, we'll send a link, let's say for Google Meet. So we'll meet and talk. And now from there, we set out the different tasks. Then still, when now we are finishing on the discussion, we are now putting timelines. So we'll be putting on the calendar because we have the shared calendar for the company. So I'll know, let's say, for example, you are supposed to do this by this date. I'll not need to go back and forth because we have already agreed as a team that we should set out this date. And of course, from when it comes to monitoring, we have, of course, collaboration tools like Slack, where we're able at least to talk further, and even on our WhatsApp group. So we know that who is doing this. And of course, we normally have at least shadowing because if we put 2 people on a task, it's much better in that now each person will be held accountable. So that's why as to us, it starts with how the communication is made. I'm not going to set out a deadline as such, but I'm just going to lead you towards, okay, telling you by this date, let's put on the Google Calendar so that, and no one will say that they didn't see, and no one will say that they didn't know, because all of us will know from there. Then, of course, we try as much as possible to understand the aspect of people, because online, on the whole day is not easy. So always give deliberate breaks. So I always say, okay, fine, you can work for whatever hours you want, but let's not have a burnout. If you say, okay, at this time I may not be in my full mode, it's okay. At least you communicate with us. Let us know. You can just send an email, send a WhatsApp message, but at least you have the string on communication. And as much as great these online tools are, we always also use traditional things like a phone call, a quick phone call. I ask my colleague, okay, how far is that? That also helps because, from there we are able now to have a quick interaction with someone. Maybe perhaps they were unable to log in online during that session so that we can find out. And for us, thankfully, at least we've managed to have at least this good type of work because we have assignments with the guys who are doing the development of this websites and such. So, on the marketing side, so it's not an issue as far as communication because again, since the team is small, we just make sure that each person has a task. And even when you're looking at, the timelines and the Slack or Google Calendar, all of us are in tandem.
Wow, that's very inspiring stuff right there. That's amazing. I totally agree with the issue of communication. I feel that because you are not in the same space with your employer or your co-workers, the void that happens because of the absence of physical presence needs to be filled, and it can only be filled if you're communicating effectively. So that's really nice, and I hope that everyone that is listening here could take it up, embrace remote working. It's a way to go, trust me, and communicate as effectively as you can. So Ansel, we've had all your team, the whole team is entirely remote. So we can tell that you've managed to remotely and to hire remotely and successfully for all the team members that you have. What does it take for an employer out there to set up a remote team and actually hire people? With this whole concept that we have about it, what does it take for someone out there to hire a whole team and set it up and, you know, it goes on successfully? What would you advise the employers?
Well, Natasha, the first thing I'll want to know from the employer, like, what is this person coming to do? Because at times, most of us are excited to hire an employee, but we have not set out what immediately this person wants to do or is coming to do. So once I figure that out, then you know, you can put out a poll, you can go on the social media pages, and you know, put out a poll. But the JD, the job description, has to be very clear.
Yeah.
Because even if from the word go, like when you're setting that call, you have to put perhaps interviews will be done remotely, because some people might assume, okay, I'm waiting for a call or I'm waiting for an email, but rather you might be actually just sending them maybe an invite. So that's something that you have to really understand. Then from there, at least once that is set up, now we have to figure out, okay, fine. These are the people who have come in. So where you are going through the CVs, for example, or you know, the certifications they have brought in. So now you've saved them. So now you have already at least an idea of the people you want to come on board. So you just have to now figure out, okay, fine, let me set out different interview dates where at least we can have an interview. So that's why now the beauty of you know, like right now what you're doing, you can set up online, you know, have FaceTime like how we're doing right now. Then from there, you can be able to understand. And of course, the most important thing of you doing this online is also to understand the comfortability of some people using this. Because if you say you're going to work remotely and you don't do it deliberately remotely, it becomes very hard, because I'll say, okay, fine, after the call, let's meet physically. But now you have to also understand how this person is comfortable as far as technology is concerned. So yes, now we have already set up and we have met, we have done the interview. Now the hiring, of course, you based on the candidate you've liked, you can just start by at least giving them tasks. Where, and I see nowadays it's quite common to have probation. So I give you a small task. I say, okay, maybe perhaps let's use this case study to, you know, see how best you can interpret it. Then by this date, set up. And you'll be surprised that even some people can't set up a meeting online. I've told someone twice set up a meeting online, and you know, they were quite confused. So that also is a good test, because you want to now see this person's capability to adapt with technology. Now this person, let's say for example, they've come in on board. So now you're having them do work. So you have to, you know, give them the tasks at hand and make sure that they understand you're monitoring their work. You know, because some people assume that, okay, because they are using, let's say for example, we use a Google Workspace, they think I can't know what time they log in, so I can know, because remember, it's a collaboration tool. And I can even know if, let's say for example, someone has not edited the document. So all these things are easy for us to measure, because you can easily, if you have especially admin rights, you can be able to look at it. And of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that this person understands this is work. However much you're working remotely, you also have to understand maybe perhaps this person's internal structure. Maybe perhaps as a team, do these guys need internet? So what will that mean for you? So as we have routers, you know, you give a router to someone and now they don't have an excuse. Laptops, yes, they are there. So you can pick a laptop and get started work. So that now, you know, you can move seamlessly as far as the technology part is concerned. And also, again, have the meetings at least once a week as a team. Then, of course, in between, anyone, you should be accessible to them. In between, anytime someone wants to come in and have a quick chat, they can book a WhatsApp call, or, you know, they can call you directly. So that now you just keep on fostering the aspect of having people, you know, working. And from there, you'll just discover with time, people will just grow into their roles. And I think one of the things I'll also advise employers is maybe don't limit people to working hours, because yeah, previously we used to think that okay, 8 to 5 is what
Yeah.
works. And I've realized when you work with people like software engineers, these guys work trans night. So of course, naturally, maybe some of us may not have the energy to stay up all night, but hey, these guys are willing to do that. But the next day, he shows me maybe later on that, hey, this is what I've done. They send me a live link. I'm like, okay. So that's also a very important aspect. So once you also understand this type of person may not want to work during the day, but they can work even over the weekend, then you just have to find an accommodative understanding for each other. And of course, once you're monitoring and seeing progress, what else would you need?
Yeah. Wow, wow, that is the beauty about working remotely. It should be my favorite thing, that the flexible working hours, the fact that you can wake up and work at your convenience as long as you share your tasks. I think that's the best thing. You mentioned something to do with internet. That is very, very crucial for us that are working remotely. And I'd like to hear from you with the connectivity that we have in our country and all the internet constraints. What do you think the future of remote working looks like in this country?
Well, I mean, as you said it, with the current internet connectivity. So once the internet improves, that will be something that will grow. But the future will be now one way, where you, as an employer, you'll just have to find a way of getting people to work remotely. And it won't matter which type of employer. Even the government is doing this right now. I have at least clients and friends who work for government. They are working from home. And this is a government thing. So now you have to also start thinking, you as an employer, and especially in the private sector, how can I be able to make people work remotely for some tasks? It doesn't have to be everything, you know, but at least some tasks where you feel that, okay, maybe it's just this, so let it be happening. And that will mean that you have to now invest a lot in IT infrastructure. That is from the hardware, like the routers, the internet, and of course, even the software, you know, the monitoring tools and the likes, because this is where the world is going. And you don't want to be caught off guard. And you know, the beauty about it, Natasha, is all along people have been talking about we are now in a global village. Now it's not even a global village, you're in global competition. Because I'm imagining, you don't want to be caught in a situation where you as a company, you have lagged so behind because you didn't invest in technology, and now your employers are thinking, hey, I can go work for another person.
Because others are embracing it.
Yeah, they're not going to ask me, okay, buy this, buy that. I saw Facebook actually giving $1,000 to each employee to buy basic office infrastructure for their homes. So what does that tell you? And of course, other companies are doing similar things. Twitter has put permanent option for office, for remote work. So I think now as an employee here in Uganda, you should now start thinking towards that aspect, because the moment we get caught behind, and I love what Waape is doing, you actually force conversation from the word go to go online. So that now people now start taking it as the future. Because if we still want Waape to hire a building, which is a structure that you'll even spend with more wiser online, then that will be killing us. So let's invest more in IT infrastructure, and let's make sure that we are competitive as far as our capabilities are concerned.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing with us. I hope that the employers out here have learned something, or those that are looking to work have learned something. We are wondering if the people that are viewing would like to reach Antiworks or use the services of Antiworks. Where can they find them? Do you have a website? Do you have social media pages?
Yes. We do have social media pages. Everything is Antiworks. So perhaps I can just spell ANCYWAX. That's social media handles. Our website is antiworks.com. So every contact information is there. Again, our social media handles are there. Yeah, so our email addresses are there. So we are quite connected as far as everything is concerned. So once you log into our social media handles or go to our website, you'll get us very quickly.
Awesome. Waape is excited to work with you. we're going to keep in touch in regard to the available job opportunities at Antiworks or any other services that we can work with. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being part of this great milestone of Waape, and we're looking forward to walking the journey with you.
Okay, Natasha, and once again, congratulations to you and your team. I believe Waape is the future, and as Antiworks, we'll be excited to work with you. We're always looking out for fresh opportunities, and I believe with Waape on board, we can go towards greater heights. Congratulations, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good afternoon.
Same to you, Natasha. All right.
Hey guys.
Great.
Hello.
Great.
Hey.
Sometimes I don't want someone.
Frank, could you please mute? Could you please
You being lazy?
Frank? Frank? Hello.
Hi there.
Hey bro. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay. Thanks for joining us. My name is Basilio. Most people call me Basil, and welcome to our expo. And we're very excited to have you guys. And I hope you guys were able to attend our previous sessions. We had our event started at exactly midday, and at midday we had our official launch of our new website, and now we're on to like different panels discussing different things here and there. And for our panel, like has been mentioned to all of you, is going to be really about communities and startup building. And yes, maybe we'll start off with like a few introductions as we wait for the one other person is missing. That's Ivan Chivuka. He will join us maybe later. I will start off with a few introductions with you guys. I'll start off and then you two could go on. My name is Basilio, and I'm currently the head of marketing at Waape. Anyone go next?
I can go next. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Antonia Lorenz. I am currently the co-founder and CEO of Wire Collective. We're a startup in Uganda, and we're trying to build a decentralized fashion production system utilizing local tailor shops on ground, connecting them, and doing that by using a blockchain. So basically a more advanced supply chain solution for developing countries. And I'm also currently building a chapter for the Sigma Squared Society, a community of entrepreneurs below 26. And we're trying to bring together the most ambitious founders below 26 in the world. And I'm currently building a chapter in Kampala here. And yeah, that's my roles, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. Guys, I would like to kind of ask a favor. I'm currently on my end. I'm unable to share my video, but I would love it very much if you're able to do that on your end, please. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Basilio.
So
Can I go
anyone who will
next?
be like speaking, maybe that. Yeah, please. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for the invitation.
My name is John Dabarosa. I work with International Trade Center. We are a development agency of the UN and the World Trade Organization, and our mandate has been to promote trade globally in emerging markets. So we work with small and medium enterprises across the globe. In Uganda, we have a focus on the IT sector. So companies in the IT or IT-enabled services sector, tech startups, the kind of support has been really around building their capacity. So training with the startups, we've been focusing on the very basic business fundamentals, from business models to value propositions, to understanding the market, to understanding the competition, and all these other interesting topics. So, and then with the SMEs, we've had a focus on export. So we've helped our beneficiary SMEs to design export marketing plans. We've helped them get ISO certified. The goal is really for us to enhance export sector competitiveness in IT. And then we've also had a lot of emphasis on business linkages. So whether it's linkages to potential investors, potential buyers, or potential partnerships. This has been through participating through B2B events. We've been lucky to participate in the biggest tech conferences in the world, from Slash in Finland, Disrupt Berlin in Germany, and then within the region, events like the Africa Tech Summit, Transform Africa, that's usually in Kigali. So yeah, we've been able to sponsor our beneficiaries to attend these events, and then we've got either deals come out of that. We've got companies get new buyers. We've got them get exposed to what other ecosystems are doing. And then I see my good friend Bob is also on the call. So we've also been working with tech hubs, accelerators and incubators like Outbox, just so that we can have a sustainability component of the project. If the project ends today, it's actually ending in June, the project that I'm running in Uganda. We have local partners like Bob and Outbox and Startup Uganda and the others to be able to carry on the support and make sure that the beneficiaries still remain supported beyond our project. So thank you so much, Antonia, Frank, Basilio, and Bob. I'm happy to be here and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Could you have
Right. Thank you so much, John. I will be turning on my video in a minute. My name is Bob Ogwang, and I work at Outbox as a venture development associate. Outbox is an innovation and entrepreneurship support organization located in Kampala. We help new and upcoming African enterprises interested in using technology to build high growth companies with co-working space, business incubation, and technical training programs. We do this through various partnerships. We help startups raise money for their ventures. We also get them access to markets, access to mentors and technical support that can help them build bankable solutions and also build businesses that are sustainable and revenue generating. I'm glad to be here to share what our experience has been like building communities of entrepreneurs and support structures over the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bob. We're going to really have majorly 4 talking points here. And I would like to just kind of have a preemptive warning that we're going to really have only 30 minutes for this call. So we'll have to be as brief as we can be. So we're going to really have 4 major talking points, and this will include mostly what the aftermath the pandemic has had with startups, what startups can, what if we shall also discuss if startups can really be pulled off with teams working say remotely. And then the other thing can be measures teams can adopt to make sure a smooth running of startups with teams working remotely, and then the lessons that have been learned from this whole pandemic, and what measures can be put in place to kind of cope with certain situations that could come up in the future with these disasters and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know how we're going to do this, if I'll give each person their question, or everyone will have a contribution on each of the topics that are going to be discussed or something like that. Maybe we should go that way. John, would you like us to start off with kind of having some kind of an insight on what on your end you feel has been something like what the pandemic has the impacts and like the aftermaths and the challenges it has caused on like startups and in general.
Thank you, Bazirio. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll try and take a very short time to answer that. I think as far as impact to the startup community and the entire ecosystem, and not just Uganda, but speaking from a regional perspective, I think so. We've had two types of impact, right? We have startups that were impacted positively, and then startups that were impacted negatively. So I'll start with the positive impact, or what came up with the pandemic that was actually good for startups. We saw a lot of fintechs. So these are startups in the financial technology payments, getting more volume. So in terms of transactions, the transactions were extremely high because physical cash was no longer a very attractive thing for small businesses to do. So everybody pretty much resorted to utilizing all these online payment platforms. And so there was an increase in volumes of transactions. That means more revenues were generated by the startups, but also that means they were able to retain a number of their clients. The e-commerce sector was also thriving. I remember March 2020 when we went into the lockdown. I had a brief mini survey with beneficiary startups on the NTFO project, and the e-commerce platforms were doing really, really well, right? Especially when they announced the total lockdown and people wouldn't go to markets. Companies like Jumia, Safe Border, we have e-commerce platforms on the project like Minute 5, Bringo Fresh. These guys were able to deliver groceries, were able to deliver fresh produces to people's doorsteps. So I think that was to a huge extent a very positive impact of the pandemic. And their numbers went up in terms of revenues. Some of them grew more than 100%, simply because people wouldn't move. I think the other thing that I saw with the pandemic, especially with the lockdown, was it kind of brought out more creativity with the startups. There was a lot of pivoting that happened. I'll give you an example. Safe Border, for example, they were not allowed to transport people, but what they did was they focused more on their food delivery element, where they were delivering food to businesses, to individuals, delivering parcels. So I think it kind of brought up that creativity out of these guys that you can actually do so many things given the resources that you have. And so we saw companies pivot. We saw e-commerce just continue to go up in numbers. We saw fintechs continue to go up in numbers. However, when it came to the negative impact of it, I think the startups that were mostly affected were startups that primarily focus on hardware. So for example, we have, again, startups that are in the solar business, right? They help to connect the off-grid communities to power and essentially help businesses to continue despite not having electricity. So you find that, I'll give you an example. We have a company called New Grid Africa that they install solar panels in communities that are in the off-grid communities, but also they have a remote solar monitoring system. So what they were able to do was, okay, if the hardware components are not working, if people are not moving, we cannot install these components. Let's focus more on the software or the monitoring system that we already have. So again, that's creativity, and it also showed that startups need to think about embracing one or more revenue streams to survive such hard times, right? If you can't do so I think I would say positively, fintech and startups that we're dealing with to deal flow, the deal flow was highly affected. There are startups that already started negotiating with investors or with new partners. And once the pandemic hit, everything was just not very certain. So investors were playing it safe. They were holding back onto their cash, even though they had started, negotiating terms of investments. They actually had to pull out. So you find that the investment bit of it was also crushed. Partnerships were crushed. People couldn't move. So companies that were exporting hardware from countries like China could not pretty much bring in those. So they were really stuck. Yeah, I think for now, that's what I would say brought the kind of impact that we saw with this pandemic at the beginning of 2020.
Okay, thank you so much, John. So Antonia, could you have something, a follow-up on, John has mentioned something about how the pandemic has driven some creativity coming up, especially in the fintech, and how has this, what has been the impact in your field of this? Has there been any kind of positive aftermath after the pandemic, or has it been just the other side of the coin for you?
Yes, definitely. So I definitely like the points that you mentioned, John. So that was really insightful. I would maybe add two things. So the first thing which I noticed is that not only did the businesses go more online, not only these tech startups, but this thing is also happening at the very roots, like these very small businesses, very normal local people, like they also got more online because they also had to. So much more is maybe happening over WhatsApp. Maybe some people went more online, all of these things got way more normal. And I feel like this also increases then the reach of customers for startups who maybe want to reach, all of these people. So I feel like it really drove up, connectivity of the normal people in Uganda, and probably also in other African countries. So I feel like that's a really good development. And even though, like, the last past days, I've been really thinking about, because in Europe and in the US, they're already talking about, okay, maybe a post-pandemic boom. So I was really thinking about, okay, how might this also maybe be happening in Africa? And one thing I really thought of was like, okay, it really got way more normal. Also, just in your normal life, to communicate to people via their phone. Also these very local people. So I feel like that's a really really great development, and I think maybe we're not going to see the impact of that next month, but we're definitely going to see it in maybe a year. So that's really cool. And then I think another point I would like to bring in is really the now the ability to really build teams online, and to really then bring so many like people together and actually still be able to work together, even though you may not live in the same place. So for example, my startup, the idea really came up during the pandemic. So we started building the startup around 7 months ago. So that was like in the middle of the pandemic. And I really built the team almost remotely, and we're now 4 people. And like, I'm really amazed how well it works. Like, I would have never thought that it's possible to have such a connection and such a good like team involvement, and really like also talks on the side and creativity sparking online with people that I maybe even never have met before. So that was really something, I think people just got used to. They're more used to just be like, okay, the default is now like a Zoom call and not the physical thing. So it really works, and I'm really amazed at that. And I feel like that really brings the opportunity to bring people together from all kinds of different countries. And I think, them being used to, having these conversations online is actually going to be a huge driver for creativity.
Thank you so much, Antonia, for that insightful feedback. Bob, Antonia has mentioned something about how the pandemic has kind of led to the idea, people getting used to the idea of things being done remotely and whatnot. So my question is to you, from what she has presented to us, what do you think? Do you think this, for especially younger Ugandans who are vying to kind of have startups on their own, is this something that they can actually pull off, having to work remotely with whatever number of team members they have on their teams? Is this something that can be actually pulled off and see to it that the startups are?
I think I'm breaking.
Sorry, was I breaking?
Yes, so I unfortunately I couldn't understand your question.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes. You can try again.
Okay, the question was to Bob, and it was a follow-up on what you've mentioned about how teams have been forced to kind of adopt the remote kind of work. And my question to Bob is, how feasible is this, for, in your opinion, with teams working remotely for especially startup companies with young Ugandans? What in your opinion would be some of the measures they could adopt and see that they can cope with this whole idea of working remotely, and as startups to kind of see to it that their startups are a success or something like that?
Thank you so much, Berzio. So, and thank you to Antonio and John. The current trend, it is very possible for actually someone to work remotely and build a startup from scratch to the point where they have a bankable product or solution on the market. And the only way, or the only ways through which those who have ideas and intend to bring them to life should do, just offhead a few things, is one, identify the problem that you actually want to solve for a given market or a given community. It is very important, and that should be step one. Is the problem worth solving? Because if it is not worth solving, you'll be wasting a ton of your time creating a product that cannot be sold and a product that customers won't have value for. Secondly, it's important that you identify people who complement you and people who are going to help you address your areas of weakness. What do I mean by this? For instance, if I'm interested in creating an edtech solution, but I have a very good understanding of how the education system works in the country, but I don't have the right technical skills to actually build an application or a web application or phone application to bring my vision to life. I'll have to go out and identify people with the right skill set, but actually are interested in doing what I'm doing. So I'll pitch to them And if they buy into my idea, then I'll work with them maybe as co-founders or partners so that we are actually able to bring my idea to life. So that was number 2, identify people who complement you and people who would actually want to work with you to bring your idea to life. So then thirdly, given the fact that we are working remotely, learning should be a continuous process. Learn, relearn, unlearn, and keep iterating. What this means is we have a lot of time at our disposal. So if you decide to create a startup right now, make sure you've actually invested enough time to understand why something has worked or why it has not worked. Because believe me, you won't be the first person creating that kind of a solution. So you may want to actually learn and relearn, dig deep and find out, how is my competition thriving? What is making them thrive? What can they do differently to make them the best on the market? So you identify the areas of weakness and you build on what they're not doing well, and you begin producing a product or a service that will become a game changer. And then lastly, you're going to burn out a lot. And this, I believe everyone will agree with me. When you're building a startup, no one tells you what you go through actually. There's so many hardships, but one thing that will keep you going is if you actually have a team that understands what you're doing. Number 2, you should have that self-motivation. You believe in what you're doing, that it can actually work. And then number 3, don't give up. Don't give up. If you can get a mentor who is going to talk to you and inspire you, someone you can bounce ideas off. If you can join a network of fellow developers, a network of those within the education system, please join those communities, as they're going to enable you think and bounce ideas off with them, so that when you go back to the drawing board and you're trying to create a better solution, you actually believe you have a community or you have a group of people that can actually work with you and help you think through a given challenge that you may face in the development process. So yes, Barizio, it is very possible for people to actually create amazing solutions and products amidst the remote working situation that we are going in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob. So we have exactly 2 minutes, and Ivan Chivuka has just joined us. Ivan, I'm just going to give you a minute, only a minute, and just to have some kind of recap for you is our discussion has really been about how the pandemic has affected the startups and whatnot. John shared with us how this has had creativity with people, with fintech thriving in this. Then Antonia shared something about how this has forced teams to work remotely and pull off things. And right now, Bob has just shared how the different measures that can be adopted with teams working remotely. And for you, just give us just in I don't know, two sentences or something like that, the lessons that startups can learn from like this disaster that it has brought to us, and measures that can be held for like future disasters to come. What do you have to say about that? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I came in a bit late. I actually didn't see that link yesterday that Colin sent, so that's my bad. So I'll just try to wrap up. I had quite a lot to say, but since I've jumped on late, I'll just try to summarize it. My take would just be 2 things. Where we don't have time, we have money, and where we don't have money, we have time. So I think during this time, we have a lot of time on our hands, and most of us, as we're having these startups, we don't have a lot of financial capital to invest and start businesses. So the best we can do right now is build our markets and build our brands. In the meantime, it's a strategy I'm personally using with my gaming and esports brand. I'm just mainly focusing on building a community and creating as much content as I can to entertain people and to bring value to them through the content we create. And in turn, I do know that these will be the people, like in the next, give or take 10, 15 years, that I'll create products of, and that will also be my market that I can sell to. So I think that's the factor that comes in with time. Right now, I don't have time to go into product development and create maybe apparel or beverages and all that. So the best I can do, the strategy I'm using right now, is building my community and building my market. We're 3 years into it, and each day we see the growth and we see it growing. So what I'm mainly focusing on right now is building community, building a market. Then in turn, once at least I'm able to say that right now I have enough capital and these are the products I want to start developing, that would be the market that I'll be using to sell to. And those will be the people that will be giving me the ideas of what types of products, to create. So in summary, it would be, why try to influence, the whole of Uganda, come up with a product, yet you can have 100 people part of your community buying your products monthly, and that's what's sustaining your business moving forward. So yeah, I think that's it. That's it in brief.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. We have that's the time we had with you guys. Thank you so much, Ivan. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Antonia. Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you for being a part of this expo, and we appreciate you so much for taking the time to be with us. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Have a good
Okay. Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
That is that we're moving away from the traditional litigation law. Lawyers and young lawyers are allowed to freelance more than how it was in the past, where if I was a lawyer, I was supposed to go to court. Now, as a person, I can be a corporate lawyer without working within the context of an established organization in terms of a law firm or an entity. I can do my work on my laptop. I can do my work anywhere at a coffee cafe or at a cafe or any place where I can be. So it is becoming an acceptable norm within lawyers. Whereas it is also becoming an acceptable norm, it is also hard to work within that in our economy, because people are used to lawyers that have business cards, that have a big law firm, or that have a place where they can find you, that have a post address. So it is becoming a norm, but there's still drawbacks that we have to work against as young lawyers, or as even lawyers, or as young professionals, to move away from that idea of for me to be a lawyer, to be a very good lawyer, I have to be established in a particular law firm or a particular organization to succeed.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Luaga. So, Sebastian, you were giving us more insight into the terrain in which freelancers operate, and perhaps you'd also pinpoint the challenges that are coming there under.
Yes, I want to agree with Emma that freelancing enables people to work more freely without the shackles of you belong here, you have to pay particular dividends if you're using someone's brand. I think that is important. What has happened is that we are in the middle of the pandemic, and as much as it has its challenges, it has also come with its benefits. That the pandemic as it is has pushed for a leap in the fourth industrial revolution, and that is technology. That today almost everyone who, I want to be specific, who, for example, in our developing world, lives around cities, and not the people in rural areas, lives around cities, is getting acquainted with technology, how to use social media at the very least. But also for the people who are upscale, the Luagas of today who have studied and are professionals in their fields, they have also learned that there are other ways that you can, for example, deliver law. They deliver legal advice or something of the kind. And that is important. But the challenge we have, and the challenge I foresee, is that for us to benefit from something, apart from the community normalizing it, okay? And if this something informs livelihoods of people, then we need to make sure that we push for policy. Because when we have policy, what policy gives us is latitude. Latitude first to have a buy-in into, for example, acceptance from bigger firms. But also policy provides for arrangements or provision of infrastructure. That, for example, if we say that we are accepting that working online is something that everyone should embrace, like government has consistently alluded in word but not in deed, then we could have a law. And if we have a law, then you know that government, because you know laws come with their specific requirements, that you have to have structures in place to implement this law. And such structures could be, for example, internet reach, affordable internet, you know, and then you also go to the people who are offering the job, that you will be able to provide for them, for example, minimum wage. Earlier today in the panel, someone was arguing that they pay their employees, I think, $1 a day, their data entrance. And that is not something someone would want to earn. But that is something you will earn if, okay, have we dropped the host?
No, just the moderator.
Okay.
Wait, we could go ahead.
All right. So what I'm saying is that what happens then is that we are at the mercy of employers when we do not have policy in place to guide this development. It is a good thing, but it needs guidance. And I know my land brother, Emma, will offer more light on that particular case. But I think for us to have structure is that we need to push for policy that legitimizes this, this structure of working, the freelancing.
Thank you very much for that response. And if I gather correctly, you did point out that national policies are either inadequate or rather absent to the effect of either legitimatizing or rather pushing through the concept of freelancing. So that takes me to my next question with Mr. Luaga Emmanuel, who is well versed with the legal terrain in the country. The question would then be, are freelancers provided for in the employment laws of the nation? And if they are, to what extent? Or should we say that they are rather operating in ambiguity? Luaga Emmanuel?
Yes, Shubra. Yes, thank you very much for that particular question. So it is a question of contracts mostly, really. So I'll say yes and no, whether they are provided for within our terrain and not. And that response will also try to cover the idea of those that work within the gig economy. Yes, because we have a general structure that provides for contractual law that if I'm working with you, the laws that govern the contract and how the contract should be and obligations that each party should have and should execute. So there's in a way a general established framework within which our contracts are thought about. But when you go into the specifics of whether freelancing is provided for under our employment law, I would love to say no, because of how employment or an employee is defined, first of all, in our Contracts Act, but also from our laws, from case law, when it comes to the idea of content, when it comes to the idea of skill, when it comes to all those things that need to be available for one to qualify as an employer. Most times, usually, freelancers do not lie within the ambit of employment as per what our act says. So they're not provided for within the Employment Act, but they can find solace with other laws like the Contracts Act, but also with things like the employment regulations that provide for casual laborers. But it's a question of how of the relationship between the freelancer and the person taking them on. How is it regulated? Because sometimes you may think you're freelancer, but when you look at the specifics or what exactly you are doing with this particular person, it may qualify you as an employee. So it's a question of looking at exactly what you're doing and seeing whether it qualifies within our employment law, and therefore you may be termed as an employee. But our laws do not provide for what happens specifically to people that work within the gig economy. And I'll end with this. I think the mind behind that is to allow for innovation, but also to allow for it to thrive. If you want to overly regulate people within the gig economy, then you are killing the spirit of innovation. You are killing the idea of how they work, because the gig economy draws or comes out of the traditional employment. It is an exception to that usually. So if you want to regulate them and say they're supposed to comply with what the employment laws in the nation say, then you are indirectly forcing them to accept and work as the old traditional employment, which is not the case for the economy, because it allows for a lot of freedoms. So both parties, both the person giving you the job, who is not the employer in the legal sense, but the person contracting you, and you, the freelancer, tend to have some kind of freedom to operate. So the there's a general framework, but there's no particular framework that looks into how the employment or the relationship between the two parties work. So it's usually contract by contract. When I look at your contract, I can be able to tell this is where we'll run to in case there's dispute, or this is where we shall run to if there's no dispute. So that's like my answer, yes and no in a way, really.
Thank you for those revelations, Mr. Luaga. I am made to understand from your submission that the laws do not exactly provide in specificity for freelancers, and as such, they do operate in ambiguity. That notwithstanding, contract laws do provide for certain instances, the extent of which the parties to those contracts are protected. But I have a question by extension that goes to both the three panelists. I'm sorry about the technical glitches coming in from Mr. Kajuri Bryant, but I hope he's able to hear this particular question. That we have instances where people become freelancers by virtue of the fact that companies employ them not on a permanent basis. For example, Uber or SafeBorder. To some extent, they have some control over what they do, but to some extent they do not. And there is more confusion pursuant to the fact that just recently in 2021, the United Kingdom Supreme Court passed a judgment to the effect that Uber drivers were actually employees. The effect of which is that they benefit from things such as severance pay, they benefit from sick leave, maternity leave, and the like. And that is something that has not exactly been discussed in Uganda, but the only presumption is that Uber drivers in Uganda are actually rather independent contractors, or they don't benefit from the employment laws. What do you have to say about that confusion?
Shubra, am I going first?
But I'm also very interested in the response coming in from Mr. Segal.
All right. First of all, I need to first respond to Mr. Luaga earlier on. I think when he said that the lack of regulation allows for growth within the gig economy, I want to entirely disagree. That we can always have regulation that, legislation that is tailored towards the gig economy. Not exactly saying that probably the Employment Act will be limiting. I think it's always important to have regulation, because then you remove the loopholes for people to be, how do I put it? To be exploited. All right, now going on to the challenges that happen with freelancing. I want to first of all say I've had the privilege of driving for Uber. I have been an Uber driver at some point in my life. And I want to say that I do share a big concern, because when you drive for Uber, you sign a lot of contracts with them, okay? But that's my first challenge with contracts, that they are made awfully long, that for people, and in most cases, freelancers are always people who are desperate, okay? Otherwise, we would call them consultants. It is consultants that will have time to go through these documents. It's consultants that will have the luxury of setting their terms. When you're a freelancer, you are largely at the mercy of the employer, at the mercy of the person giving you the gig. And that is why I think that regulation is key, because then the other person can dictate their terms and you have nothing to do about it. I'll go back to Uber, that when you drive for Uber, Uber puts you in a position where you either do or you go away. You understand? And the fact that, for example, in developing economies, not very many people will be interested in reading all these terms and conditions. Very many people just assent to them, okay? So you find drivers getting into accidents or even getting robbed by clients, and they have no point of redress, because what? There is a clause you agreed to in the contract that says Uber is not liable for anything that happens to you or your car, yet you have to actually pay them commission per trip you take. So I think it is wanting, regulation is wanting, and regulation does not happen for companies. I think this is a job that should be for governments. And that's why you see that when the UK Supreme Court took a stand, then the people who are working with Uber have better working conditions, okay? But here, because our government is probably restrained, we do not have a lobbyist power, or our representatives are, I don't know, are not in touch with the trends in the world, that you will find today our parliament has way too many people who can barely use the iPads we provide to them. And that's what I'm saying, that I think regulation is undoubtedly key. We can always tailor it to our wanting, but there needs to be regulation from the people that we give the social contract to protect us, the government.
Yes, thank you for that very insightful response, Mr. Segawa. And allow me make mention that we have nobility in our midst. A man who came from driving Uber in the gig economy is now an ambassador to the East African community. And that goes to show that Waape is in the right place, pointing out that freelancers in themselves have a chance at growing themselves into nobility or even better places. So Mr. Luaga Emmanuel, I'm sure you have a comeback from the response of Mr. Sebastian Segawa. We'll have you.
Yeah, sadly, I hope this won't become a debate between me and Sebastian, coming from the different worldviews that we hold. Yeah, so one, I agree with Sebastian that there is need for regulation, and the state is taking simple steps towards that direction. For example, for fintech, we have the National Payment Act that is coming up. There's already an act right now, really, that tries to respond to fintech, which was becoming a very big driving force behind our financial sector. So the state tends to move. Problem is that it moves after and not before. So we are usually reactionary and non-preemptive of the ideas or of the problems that may come out of these particular things. Now, my problem with the notion of regulating the gig economy is that regulation works in favor usually of the bigger party in the transaction. So, for example, the UK can go ahead and have a stand against the gig economy, but it is usually very hard to say that Uganda will have the same latitude to do the same. And that is because the UK has moved from a place where they have to think about labor so much. You understand? Sorry, they're a place where they have to think about their labor. And yet in Uganda, we have to think about capital more. So it's a debate between capital versus labor. And that is why it's usually very hard to regulate the gig economy in Africa. The problem is that the African state needs capital to take care of the labor. So if you think about the labor before the capital, then you're bringing the cart before the horse, which does not work out well. So you have to think about, how do I protect the capital before I look at the labor thereafter? That's why, for example, questions on the minimum wage and how it can be implemented in Uganda have been hard, because if you want to implement the minimum wage in Africa, you're going to lose the companies that have been put up in the investment parks, who cannot go ahead and pay that particular amount of money. Same debate that Trump had about the Chinese taking most of the companies, because the Chinese think about the capital before they think about the labor. So that's a huge debate when it comes to the debate on whether we need to have more regulation for the gig economy in Africa. I think it is important. States ought to protect their people, ought to respond to the exploitation that I talked about, which is very glaring and very present. And I think states ought to respond to that. But as they do that, they also ought to think about how can they keep up with the needs to get people jobs. Uganda has a very young population, a big young population, and most of it is moving towards the gig economy. The moment you regulate it and overly regulate it, you may lose out on investment. When you lose out on investment, the subpersons who have been claiming the want regulation will turn against you, and your state will fall. So the state is also is between a hard place and a rock, really. So they have to think about, how do we protect the capital, but also protect our citizens, and that's the problem with how do we regulate this, and how do we have young minds like people at Waape, how do we have them on board to think about how they can regulate this? Because these people work in these things, they know what exactly happens, they know what the problem of a freelancer is. But the Minister of Labor right now may never know that, because he's never been a freelancer in his entire life. He shouldn't have never been that. So you need someone who has such a mind to respond to those particular problems. As I conclude, I think there's need for regulation, but also regulation has to think about the fact that people have issues. So it has to think about the fact that African states need the capital, and that capital goes back into the labor. So let's think about capital right now. How do we get young people innovating? How do we make sure that they have spaces to innovate before we go ahead and think about regulating them and putting them in a particular box, or how we want them to operate and work? That is it from me.
Council, thank you for that submission. I will not even make an attempt at paraphrasing, but at least thus far we can understand that there are employment laws in Uganda that protect an employee. And if what you do encompasses what the employment laws defines as employment, then you're protected to that extent. You're given benefits such as maternity leave, you're given benefits such as sickness pay and the like. However, the biggest question in the room is as pertains freelancers.
Just a minute.
And the protection. Yes, please.
Shubra, just a minute. I just want to say this, that even the employment laws that we have currently in Uganda are there because International Labour Organization pushed for us to have them. So as a nation, we rarely think about regulations that protect the employer, so the employee, and even the ones that we have currently that protect the employee were forced upon us. If you look at 3 of them, if you look at the Employment Act, and I think also the Labor Unions Act, 3 of them, they were passed on the same day because there was pressure from the West for us to have them to protect the laborers. So our state rarely thinks about the labor because they're looking for money. That's usually the problem. So, and that's the problem of freelancing and regulation around it.
Thank you, Emma, and that has been duly noted. We have with us Mr. Kajuri, who's going to also tell us his view about the terrain in as regards employment laws and freelancers. Mr. Kajuri, you're welcome. We're sorry about the technical issues that you've been having, but I'm made to understand that you're able to talk now. Just summarily, what's your take on the position of freelancers in the employment laws of Uganda? Do you think there is need for regulation, and is there any to that very end?
Good afternoon. Should we repeat question? Hello? Hello?
Yes, I hope you can hear me, Mr. Kajuri Brian. Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me? We're getting some feedback. Yes, the question is about whether freelancers are protected by employment laws in Uganda, but also the question extends to whether there is need for regulation and what manner it should take in as regards freelancers in Uganda.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, fellow panelists. I'm sorry for joining in late. I've been trying to capture a few of your discussions. I've loved the way the previous speakers have dissected. What I can say about the freelancers, probably freelancers are part of what I would call the weaknesses in our, or the loopholes in our employment laws. The employment sector is one of the heavily regulated. It is regulated, but the laws, they don't yield the most results. You look at the employment legal regime in Uganda, it has a series of laws ranging from rights to employee rights, then post-employment, then third parties related to employees, we have a barrage of employment laws. But the challenge, you realize that with the trends, some laws have been interpreted to be applicable or to be in line with the current trends. I've heard the previous speakers discuss the Uber case. You realize that when they were enacting the Employment Act of Uganda, I think it's one of the best drafted laws. Why do I say so? When you look at that act, it envisages certain things, or it envisaged by them, things that would happen 5 years, 10 years ahead. Like if the lawyers here will tell you when a law is being enacted, even when you're interpreting it, you must bear in mind that it is a living thing, or rather instrument that caters for the future generations. You don't interpret it with the conservative old mentality. Now that takes me to your question. So when you look at our legal regime, it does not directly address the plight, rights, legal status of freelancers. But what happens is that both the legal regime in comparison with common law, where our legal regime, the labor law, does not specifically provide for how our freelancers are treated. What happens that when an employer, let me say like a company, engages a freelancer, there are two options. Either in the due process, the freelancer may temporarily be governed by, like someone said, by the Contracts Act, but also by the Employment Act. How? I had someone talk about, for example, these casual laborers. There's an amendment actually in the law where they want to now properly recognize them and even their rights to be well entrenched. Now, I can come as a freelancer. All I want is to do for you something, get my pay. I go engage another person. You don't control me. What would ordinarily call the independent contractors. But the Uber decision is very problematic in our labor law practice. Why? Whereas the law may be similar, the trends or the circumstances, in my opinion, upon which the Uber decision was decided, those are well-developed economies. They treasure, they take employment very serious. You realize that, for example, if you sample in their jurisdiction, you realize that, I'm told time's up, you realize that their labor disputes are very minimal compared to ours, meaning that either for us, we have not yet appreciated the employment laws we have, or the employers are still reluctant. So that effect, they can either be independent contractors. From there, the employer can choose to formalize this freelancer, or they leave them the way they are. So in summary, we do not have a direct legislation dealing with the freelancers. It is at the instance or the option of the employer either to treat you as a freelancer and independent contractor, where convinced they can treat you on temporary contracts, among others, then formalize you. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kajubi Brian. Thank you, Mr. Luaga, Emmanuel, Sebastian, Ivan. I'm very much pleased to know that we had people who had that much knowledge, an expanse of knowledge that we could pick from. But at least we can be able to understand that there are laws that can provide for different instances of freelancing, but contracts laws are at the center of the same. We do hope that
Just checking. Is it just me or is there breaking?
I think our dear moderator.
Me too, I can't see her.
Ah, okay.
Freelance, that's because then
We clearly need infrastructure.
and it's called freelancing and the gig economy.
I can't really get Shubra. I can't really get her.
And I would also like a minute to conclude, but I don't know whether the moderator will be able to heed my request.
Well, I mean, I think let me mute her slightly, then we could get this. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mbula Chalu. I want to thank my land brothers here. I know I can't associate with a profession, but I appreciate their input. I just wanted to say that the way they are viewing things is independent of the progression.
I can hear me, my
world.
network's getting worse by the minute. From here, please.
Okay. So,
sure thing.
All right. So what I was saying is that very many, for example, cases have been called not because the law or the countries were rooting for them, but because of the mass revolution of people. In the case of George Floyd, even the very case of Uber was because Uber drivers took to Twitter and to all social media platforms to protest their working conditions. All I'm saying is that right now, we have access. When these laws were being made 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, we never had any input in them. All we would hear is that a law has been passed and we are at its mercy. But now we have the ability to interrogate every article that is being put in. And I think that that is something that is glorious. We can't still say that, no, it will be favoring one party or the other. No, I think now we shall have a bird's eye view into the law. And of course, I agree with them that regulation has its challenges, but I would rather not be at the mercy of an employer. Otherwise, thank you so much. It's been an honor for me to be part of this panel with Mr. Emmanuel Luaga, my senior, very respectable man, and Mr. Brian Kajubi. I've not met him before, but his insights were imperative. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Should I be able to take it back or should I continue? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Over to you, Emmanuel, if you haven't yet concluded. Final remarks.
Yes, so one, I'll say thank you very much to the panelists. I agree totally with, mostly with Mr. Brian Kajubi's counsel, and then partially with Sebastian, especially on the need for regulation. Just two things. One is the need for freelancers and also employees to take their time to look at their contracts. Whereas I understand that we work in a place where the employee is more desperate than the employer because there are very few jobs. It is important for you to understand your contract of employment. What usually happens is if I'm drafting a contract, I have to apportion risk. And that means that whoever's paid me takes the least amount of risk. If it is the employer, I'll make sure that the employer milks as much as possible out of you. And if it's the employee, I also try to do as much as possible to push back to make sure that their rights are provided for. So if you're an employee, take off some time and read your contract, or if you're freelance, take off some time and read your contract and make sure that risk does not lie on your side, or at least it is mitigated in a way or another. Secondly, there is need for the state to move faster to regulate all these particular spaces. But also the regulation cannot move ahead of the economy. The economy informs what the regulation will look like. If the economy still needs more money than as it is right now, then the regulation will be relaxed to ensure that we let in as much money as possible. But if the economy grows, then things will be more acceptable, or we'll be able to cater for the bigger picture. But right now, the bigger picture is let's get in as much money as possible. But also, secondly, as senior counsel said, there's need. The gig economy of freelancing arises out of traditional professions or traditional employment. Therefore, regulating it may take us back to traditional employment, and then also have more people or another kind of employment arising, because the gig economy has also been overly regulated. But thank you very much, Collins, for being a very good team leader and for the work being done for Shubra and the entire team at Waape. Thank you very much. It was just it was an honor to be part of this panel, and thank you to the other two panelists, Mr. Kajubi and Mr. Sagawa. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Emma. I also want to send greetings to the leadership at Waape, specifically to Madam CEO. Thank you.
Thank you to Emma. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kajubi. Brian, thank you. Ooh. Hello, can you hear me, anybody?
Yes,
we can hear you.
Yes, thank you so much for attending this particular session. Those were very insightful thoughts coming in from each one of you, the panelists. It's been an honor for me to moderate this particular session because I've picked so many insights, but I've also been able to understand that the minds and efforts of Waape are in the right place, and as such, we are yet to envisage, but also to experience one of the biggest Ugandan revolutions in the employment sector. Allow me to wish you a lovely afternoon, and keep it up, keep moving with us as Waape, and the sky will be the only limit. Thank you.
Thank you too.